Wait, I'm not logged in. Give me a second. I need to actually be able to see chat. That's kind of important. I can just do this. Yeah, I don't know why I'm still under the Genshin Impact category. I can't actually swap to Microsoft Excel. That's not like a category that exists. Um, so I was like trying to like go to Microsoft Excel and be like, hey, yeah, I'm going to be streaming in the Microsoft Excel category because that would technically be most accurate, but I can't actually do that because Microsoft Excel is not apparently a game that Twitch recognizes. And that's cool if you. Yeah, for anyone that's already said just chatting, what if I want to take advantage of Genshin Impact viewers? I can do that though. Stream title. Just chatting would probably be. Yeah, there we go. There we go. And yeah, so we'll probably be starting, let's say 15 minutes from now. I'm not really sure exactly when I want to start, but it's gonna be soon. So yeah, we'll see. If anyone wants to watch the full thing, but you can actually stay here for the full thing, it's gonna be fine because coding and tech, I can check. Yeah, let's see. But like, I was trying to find like Excel, and yeah, Microsoft, and this is not it. Microsoft's Excel 95. So let's see, coding, tech, develop, software and game development. Does this count as software and game development? Not really. I'm not developing a game. Programming? I'm not basic pro. I mean, Microsoft is programmed in VS or Visual Basic for applications, so technically, but whatever. We'll just go stick with just chatting. Any plans for the next TC Podcast? I don't really know. A lot of people are currently right now at PAX West, so can't really do that. Hi Zonto. I'll ping you when we get on pivot tables, and then we can talk about that. Let's see. We will get started. I want to get quite a few people here before we get started because also let me know if the audio is off or anything, chat. But I want to wait for a little bit before we get started. The reason for that is because the stuff I'm going to be covering at the beginning is Excel basics. And that's something that I think everyone really needs to know. Like, what is a row? What is a column? How do you do keyboard shortcuts? How do you adjust row size? How do you adjust column size? How do you merge cells? What does it mean to merge cells? What are formulas? How do you put values in cells? What are named ranges? Things like that. And that's really stuff that's very important for a lot of people to know, especially named ranges, because named ranges save lives. And if you don't do named ranges in your spreadsheets, they become impossible to read and debug. So yeah. Let's see. We'll wait a little bit. Let's wait until 3:45. Also, sorry for any Asia people. I know this is very, very, very late for y'all. Who pinged me? Let me turn on streamer mode. Leaking staff chat on stream. True. Okay, we'll see. Let's see. Chat. Excel stream right before. I've heard your name before. I would hope so. If you are here to watch me do math, I would assume you're probably decently familiar with Genshin TC. So yeah. But anyways, let's get started in 7 minutes. Before then, I don't know what to do. If anyone actually has any like advice, not really advice, but more like things that they want to have covered. So for example, I think the topic list. Let me check. PC announce. Excel basics, keyboard shortcuts, basic functions, named range solver, pivot tables and slicers, sparklines, charts, macros, and other developer tools, data validation, dynamic array functions. Those are all things that I'm going to be covering. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get through all of this, or maybe I will be able to get through all of it and more. I just have never really like taught Excel to people who don't really do that much Excel before. So it's going to be a little bit weird on timing. I also have to get to a section at 6 o'clock, so it can't go longer than 2 hours and 15 minutes. I took an Excel class in college, really need a refresher. Good. Let's see, who is here? I will wait a little bit longer and then we can get started. Okay, so, but yeah, if anyone has any topics that they want me to cover, then yeah, science and technology. Oh, I can check, yeah. Let me see, edit stream, science and technology. No matching games found. Oh wait, there we go. How are you liking Windows 11? Is it good? I mean, I've been using it for the past 2 years and just feels kind of normal. It's like nothing special, I guess. Some things are a little bit annoying, but not significantly different, I guess. We're going to see the last podcast, the one right before 3.0. I follow your YouTube, but it doesn't seem to be there. It might be saved as a Twitch VOD. Are you talking about the one with Kurt? I think that we have to download that and upload it still. Going to taught me more about spreadsheets than my graduate courses. I am very happy to hear that. Because yeah, I feel like a lot of the learning process with Excel is really like actually just getting in and using Excel, because so much of Excel being fast in Excel is knowing like, yeah, Control D copies down rows, Control R copies across columns, F2 allows you to edit values in cells, Control N allows you like or Alt N or Alt MN is like name manager menu, Alt H is home, Alt whatever, all the like random keyboard shortcuts. Because keyboard shortcuts really make your workflow much faster when it comes to Excel. But knowing all of those, knowing what these tools are, not just conceptually, but actually how to use them, is really, really useful. Because you can learn about, like, yeah, pivot tables do this, like, in a conceptual manner, but if you don't know how pivot tables actually work, if you've never, like, actually made a pivot table on your own, it's going to be pretty difficult to implement that knowledge in a actual productive manner in like the workplace or within whatever you want to do. If you want to keep track of your personal budget, if you want to keep track of whatever. Basically, all I'm saying is putting your hands on the actual spreadsheet, actually making spreadsheets is much more useful than just learning about it in the classroom. It might be saved as vol attendance, but you... Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's fair, that's fair. We'll have to see. We can mute that part out. Also, bye, Kurt. Have fun at work, I guess. What is this sound? This sound is Demon Gummies. It's just like background music that we tend to use on stream. It's very wholesome that you're doing this. Glad I joined. Meantime, I'll delete the pins from the map. Yeah, thanks. I think that it's Definitely very good for a lot of people to be getting their hands on Excel in the TC community because Excel is very useful. A lot of employers look for Excel skills, and doing TC and actually just getting your hands dirty with Excel is a really quick way to learn it. Like personally, I've only ever taken one Excel course. It was like a semester long, and I'm still an undergrad, so it wasn't like a graduate level Excel course at all. But given how much I've worked with spreadsheets like during my time in TC, it's definitely helped me a lot. Definitely made me much better than a lot of my peers at doing Excel, and it's just like useful and fun to play around with. Not just for work, but also for your daily life, like creating personal budget, helping people with like keeping track of like a trip or whatever. Like just yesterday, I was working on a KQM finance sheet because KQM's got a lot of money coming in, a lot of money going out, so we have to have something to keep track of it all, and I was creating a financial dashboard for KQM, which is still not done, but it's pretty interesting. Unfortunately, I can't show that to y'all because it's got the money we make and the money we're paying out, which is a little bit like private information, but it's pretty cool. Ayzel. Will I save the video? Yeah. Like your voice, thank you. I've forgotten everything I did in Excel. Well, hopefully this will be a good refresher. I am streaming. Yes, I am. Ayzel. ZSK, if you want to join. Oh, there you are. You actually did join. I forgot to unmute. There we go. Yeah, I think ZSK/Reens may join in. I was just like, hey, I think maybe I'll move way too fast and I'll be like talking too fast and go through things too fast. So just be sure to like hold me back. Just act as a check and whatever. Will I save the VOD? Yes, it will be saved. It will auto-save to Twitch, and I'll also be recording to my own PC, so it should save. Can you get the certificate online or only in the class? No, you can get it. I think it's like $100. You take an examination through Microsoft, and you get like an Excel certificate. I haven't actually gotten mine yet. I probably should do that at some point this year, but yeah, you can get it. Yeah. Working on game testing quality assurance. Sometimes I need to work on Excel. And sometimes I even get scared. Yeah, Excel. I think the nice thing about Excel is a lot of the stuff is very approachable. Like there's a reason why people make sheets in TC and they don't all make web apps, or they don't all like write code in C++ or in Python, because Excel is more approachable than those. And yeah, as ESK said, you need to find the center that is certified to issue it. But anyways, it's 3:45. We've got a decent number of people here, so let's hit start recording. And yeah, so hello everyone, welcome to the Excel tutorial hosted by Cutting Mains by yours truly, Ayzel. So in this quick tutorial, well, it's said quick, but it's probably going to be like 2 hours long. We're going to cover a lot of topics. We're going to cover some basic Excel skills that I think that most people need to know. We're going to cover some really useful data analytic tools. We're going to cover some really useful like data display tools. So this includes things like pivot tables, pivot charts, just regular charts. We're going to cover functions. Those include a lot of your basic functions such as lookups and index matches. We're going to cover some more advanced functions, not too many, because of course this is intended to be a more introductory thing. But I'm going to cover some of the like more advanced functions that I think most people will find to be very useful. Those include filter, unique, xmatch, xlookup. Let's see, what else? I'll probably just get to all the formulas as I go through them. We'll talk about like how you can design spreadsheets well, so not using like 500 different volatile functions and blue screening people's laptops. That's something that I actually did once. Don't do that. Making sure that you have the right number of helper cells, making sure that you are allowing people to view what they need to view, hiding what you need to hide, keeping things on separate sheets if they need to be on separate sheets, a lot of organizational stuff. Because some issues that I see with people whenever they're making sheets in Excel is they'll put every single thing, like every single line in the formula in a single cell, and then you'll have a formula that's like 10 lines long. that looks that looks impressive or whatever, or you can flex like, oh, I have a really long formula, and sure, it looks complicated, but from a functionality standpoint, from a debug and verification standpoint, that's pretty terrible, because how can you debug a formula if it just looks like a5, if a5 index match whatever 10 lines long? No one's going to be able to debug that. You should always be using like good Excel practices, good organizational practices, in order to make sure that people can both verify and actually read what your sheet does. So yeah, this will be uploaded to YouTube, Bessie. So yeah, I actually was making a spreadsheet, the first iteration of like the master sheet that is now maintained by Vlad is, when I was making it, I used a bunch of indirects in order to refer to character talent multipliers, and using too many indirects is bad. We'll talk about that later when we get to functions, but just quickly before we get there, indirect is what's called a volatile function. Volatile functions are recalculated every single time the spreadsheet is updated. That means if you make any change to any cell, every single one of those formulas has to update. And you can imagine how much calculation you have to go through when you have 500 different cells that need to update every single time you make a change to a sheet. So yeah, don't do that. But yeah, let's get started. So let me open. So I wrote down like some stuff that would probably be good. Let me see. Where is it? Okay, so let's talk about spreadsheets. And before we talk about the specifics of spreadsheets, let's ask, why would you even want to use spreadsheets? Let's put this as a lesson tab. So, Excel tutorial. Okay, first, let's actually not merge that. Let's have this like this, and let's do this. Okay, why use spreadsheets? So there are a couple reasons why you might want to use a spreadsheet. For one reason is that you want to keep track of a lot of data. And because I used the minus there, it interpreted as the formula, so keep track of a lot of data. Because spreadsheets, you have a lot of space. I mean, let me go all the way down. That's like, what, 1,048,576. And then you can go all the way across the XFD. So you have the ability to keep track of a lot of data in a spreadsheet. That data is also very easy to access because you can just go to the cell in which your data lies, and then you can just immediately pull it up. And it's also very easy to represent data visually. Because if I were to just say, like, let's take some of the data from this car inventory thing that I'm going to be using as an example soon. Let me change that to normal formatting. And let's insert a quick chart, recommended. And that's really all it took. Like, I just created a chart that quickly. It's very easy to represent these things, like, or represent data. So that's another reason to use Excel. And there are, of course, like different ways to represent data. You can use pivot tables, spark lines. This is all stuff that we'll cover. And there are many tools in Excel are built in. You don't have to write your own functions. If you like are a computer science person, a lot of this stuff you write, a lot of the stuff you use, yeah, you can use like the standard template library if you're in C++, or you can like import packages for Python or whatever. But basically every single thing, every single formula that you use in Excel, unless you're a very, very advanced Excel user, is going to be built in Excel. You don't have to go somewhere else to get it. You don't have to write it on your own. It's going to be already there for you. And it's relatively easy to use. And Excel basically tells you how to use them. So if I go to like equals filter, and then I just type parentheses, I can just click on this fx function, and it tells me what the fields that I need for the filter are. I need an array. I need values to include in the filter function, and this, if empty is not bolded, array and include are bolded because those are required fields. If empty is just, if I cannot find the value within this array, what do I display? So very easy, a lot of tools built in, easy to represent data visually, easy to keep track of data. Basically why you would want to use Excel. Let me check chat. Talk slower. Does this also work with Google Sheets? Yes. A lot of the things that I'm going to be talking about are both Excel and Google Sheets. So yeah, why not? Why shouldn't use spreadsheets? Okay, so there are a couple reasons why you might not want to use spreadsheets. One, it's very limiting in functionality. This is not going to matter for a lot of people because for a lot of people, they only need the tools that Excel has built in. You're not going to need the tools that you can get in C++ or in Java or in Python. But for some people who need to work with really large data sets, who need to manipulate their data in ways that Excel does not make it easy to do, they need the additional functionality that you can get through like SQL or through NumPy or just through C++, Java, whatever, for some purposes. Basically, like, I can't really say exactly what Excel like fails at, but there are a lot of things that is relatively more limited to in comparison to other coding languages or to coding languages in general. I think it's pretty easy to view Excel as some kind of coding language, like pseudo coding language, because you use functions, you write out functions, you keep track of data, you have variables and named ranges and in cell references, but it's not exactly the same as a coding language, of course. There is a lack of ability to handle really large data sets. Excel can be pretty slow when it comes to that. I think most people who handle really large data sets tend to use like NumPy. I'm not exactly sure because I've never had to do it before, but that's what I've heard. Restricting UI. You can theoretically build much more powerful UIs for Excel, but it requires quite a bit of knowledge. And even if you're able to build those things, it is still very restrictive. As a good example, I was trying to build a financial dashboard for KQM yesterday, as I mentioned. And there's not actually a way to have a button, like a shape button, and when you click it, it takes you to a website for Google Sheets. You can click it, it gives you a link, and you have to click on the link that takes you to the website. But there's no way to go directly there, which kind of sucks because it just means that whenever you look at like the UI functionality that you have with the coding language, it's going to be much more powerful than whatever UI functionality you have in Microsoft Excel and Google Sheets. So UI can be restrictive. Version issues. This is again shared with like some coding languages, but Excel has a large difference between some versions. I think that this might not be that relevant for a lot of people, but I think even if you get like kind of into advanced Excel, it starts to become a problem. So for example, switch evaluates the expression. If you are at all familiar with any kind of coding language, you should be familiar with what switch does. It basically evaluates, like, let's say, it's like a way to do nested ifs. There's also the IFS, which is check multiple conditions. If they are all met, return. If they aren't met, don't return or return some other value. These are pretty useful, but they don't exist in Excel like 2010 or Excel 2007. At least I think so. I don't remember the exact like versions that these functions like started to be used in, but there are a lot of functions that just don't exist in older versions, like equals smadge. This does not exist in anything behind Office 365, I think, and 2021. So yeah, there can be version issues, which you can check. Of course, you can go to info, and then I think it's check for issues and then check compatibility to check for anything that doesn't work with older versions. So yeah, pivot table doesn't work in this version. Filter doesn't work in these versions. Minor loss of fidelity. Table style formatting can't be displayed in 97 to 2003. I mean, you just see, like, this is not even that big of a spreadsheet. I just have a table, another big table, pivot chart. I deleted the pivot chart in this, pivot table, and just data here. And I already have a decent bit I already have a decent amount of version issues. So yeah. The last reason that you wouldn't want to use Excel, and this is specific to Excel, not Google Sheets, is it's not shareable. There isn't a GitHub for Excel. You can't upload your code to GitHub, or you can upload your code to GitHub and like you can share it, and you can have commits, you can have PRs, you can pull and push, whatever. You don't have that with Excel. You don't have the ability to collaborate on a spreadsheet. You technically can if you like use Dropbox and you like are good about your version control, but it's nowhere near the shareability of like Google Sheets, which is mostly why people tend to use Google Sheets over Excel, even though Excel does have more functionality. Like Excel has power. I actually don't know whether or not Google Sheets has some of these things, but there are a lot of things that I think that Google Sheets does not have. Power query, getting data from like PDFs. Solver does exist in Google Sheets, but it's much worse than in Excel. But yeah, so not shareable. Kind of sucks. Or not easily shareable, at least. I think Excel and browser can be shared? Yeah, I think so. When they... Let's see... and based Excel supremacy, true. Some works have their own type of Excels too. Yeah, that's true. Does UI stand for user interface? Yes. Echo, I'm your biggest fan. We should be using it for TC. Yeah, we can. I know like Excel and browser does exist. I don't really like using like in browser Microsoft apps because they're much slower. But yes, it does technically exist. Anyways, let's talk about the basics of Excel now that we've covered why you might or might not want to use Excel. So the basic unit of a spreadsheet is a cell. Each of these things I'm clicking on is a cell. You can put stuff in it. You can put numbers in it. You can put dates in it. You can put like cash in it. And each of these is a different format. So this is text format. So if I do this, I can just put this as general. This is a number. So I can change this to number format. This is a date, and dates can be formatted in a lot of different ways. You can have it as long date like this, or you can have it as short date like that. And this is currency, and money can be formatted in a couple different ways. You can have it as accounting, which looks like this, or you can have it as currency, which looks like what I just had it as, that. And having these format tools can be very important because, as I stated earlier, a large strength of Excel is its ability to display data in different ways. And there are a lot of different ways that you can format cells to make them more readable, to make them more presentable. But yeah, this is a cell. Each cell has a row and a column. Rows are represented here, columns are represented here. Rows are numbers, columns are letters. And whenever I refer to a cell, I always want to refer to it as column row. So this is C8. So let's say I have like 529 in the cell. If I type equals C8, then it just retrieves the value from C8, which is 529, puts it here. So yeah, cells are the building blocks of spreadsheets. Spreadsheets are made up of multiple cells. And each cell stores stuff. You transform it. Let me see. Let me look at my notes. They can be referred back to. And one important thing about cells that you might not be familiar with is cells can be named. So let's, for example, pull up this sheet real quick. Actually, that's probably a bad idea. Let's say I'm gonna build a lookup really quickly. Equals index batch let's look up this, let's see, match D1 this 0. No, let's just have it retrieve the entire row. Whatever. This should still be right. So yeah, so right here what I'm doing is I'm retrieving the first instance of Ayaka in this motion value table. So this is the first instance of Ayaka, and it retrieves this entire row because I just said to do that. I will tell you why it does that when we get to index and like advanced functions. But right now, all you need to do is it's retrieving the first instance of Ayaka, the first row, and it's basing it off of D1. But instead of doing D1 here, because this is really ugly to look at, right? Because you have like no idea what A1 to T802 or D1 or any of these mean. I can instead rename this to car name. And instead of having D1 here, I can just say match car name. It's not case sensitive. So right now, I have Ayaka, but I can also say I have this be Ayato or Kuki, or basically like whatever character, Heizo. So yeah, and now this looks slightly better. I mean, ideally this would also be a named range. This would also be a named range, and then you can just say index in the character table. So like car table, match car name, and then you can have this be like car table, like car list or something. And that is much more readable than what I had before. So that's why you want to use named ranges. They're they make your spreadsheet much easier to look at. And let me delete this actually. So yeah, that's why you want to use named ranges. They make formulas much easier to look at. Let's talk about references real quick, because that's also very important for named ranges. So whenever you have a cell, you can refer back to it with a reference, but there are different types of references. So let's put 403 in D3, and then let's put 402, and then let's like drag this down. So in E3, I can say this is equal to D3. And that just refers back to D3. This is what's called a relative reference. Relative references move as you copy the formula over. So if I drag this over to F3, this now refers to E3 instead of D3. And I think this might be a little easier to see if I drag this down. So as you can see, this refers to D3 initially, but when I copy the formula down, it goes to D4, and then this one's D5, D6, D7, D8. It changes as you as you copy the cell over or down, or as you copy the cell anywhere, honestly. I can just put this over here, and now this refers to M12. This refers to the cell immediately to its left. But you can also make it so that this doesn't change as you copy it over, and that's what's called an absolute reference. You do this by hitting function F4, and now you have these two dollar signs, $D, $3. And now if I drag this down, it stays as 403 because it constantly keeps on referring to D3. Very, very, very useful tool. Absolute relative mixed references are like one of the most important things about like Excel. So you can also have mixed references. So that's when you want to have like one thing stay constant. You want either the row or the column to stay constant, but not the other. Stay like this. So let's say this is supposed to be referring to D3. And now let's say when I drag down, I don't want this number to change. I don't want these to all be 402, 401. I want it to stay as 403. But when I drag it across, I do want it to be able to change from 403 to 402 to 401. So how do I do that? I want to keep the row constant, the 3 constant. So what I'll do is I can type a $sign here. And now, since D is not constant, D referring to columns, the column is not constant. So I can drag across here. It does 403, 402, 401. But when I drag down, you'll notice this is 403, 403 all the way down. It doesn't change with this. That's what's called a mixed reference, where you have one thing held constant, but you have the other thing not being held constant. me check chat real quick to make sure. Yo, just with the drag down. Excel and browser, true. Okay, let me try to cover this again, because it does seem like, yeah, it's very easy to get lost here. Basically, a reference is just how you refer to a cell. Equals D3, referring to the cell. When you have large data sets, I think this might be easier if I actually use this as a data set. Let me remove this table. And let's reformat this. This should be currency. Okay, so let's say that I want to, when I drag down, I want this to change to have Honda. Like, I want to be looking at the make as I go down, but I don't want to be able to drag across. So when I drag across now, it changes Honda to Accord to silver. Let's say I don't want that, but I do want it to be able to change as we go down. So what I would want to do is I would want to keep the column constant. Column is the letter, remember? The $sign refers to what you're keeping constant. So if I have the $sign before B, that means that I'm keeping the column, because columns are referred to by letters, constant. If I have the $sign before the 2, that means that I'm keeping the row, because rows are referred to as numbers, constant. So if I do this, for example, then this is keeping both the column and the row constant. So no matter how I copy it over, it's always just going to stay equals to B2. But if instead I was to want to do this, and I want to allow the row to change, I'm going to delete this $sign. And now this can change. So Chevrolet, Toyota, Ford. But if I drag it across, it doesn't change like it did before. Because remember, before this was Honda to Accord to silver. But now it's just Honda to Honda to Honda to Honda. Because this is always going to be referring to the column B, because B is held constant. It's like, I'm not sure if saying it's a static variable is comparable for anyone that like does coding. Kind of, not really, I don't really know. But yeah, it's just a way that you would keep either the row or column locked, or both. And you'll see why this is useful when we actually start building things. Could you give an actual use case for keeping it constant? Yeah, sure. Let's look at. I actually was building like something that required relative data sets yesterday, or relative references yesterday, but it has like data from KQM finances, so I'm just gonna make up some data. Okay, so let's say, for example, that we have a certain amount of money coming into KQM, and we're paying some of the admins in KQM, or some of the site managers, or people who do things in KQM. So let's say, how should I represent this? It would be like March 2022, April 2022, May 2022, and I can just drag this down. See this little box on the left hand, or on the bottom right, by the way? You can drag this box downwards and it will autofill for you. So since I have April and May, it says, oh, there's a gap of 1 month between them. That must mean that the next one must also have 1 month. So when I drag it down, it just goes month by month by month by month by month, like that. So this is the date, and let's say income for month. Let me resize that column. And also, what I just did there is I resized the column based on what the like longest cell in the column is. So let's have like this, for example. If I double click this column right here, in between this column and the next column over, it will automatically resize the column to whatever the widest thing is, which is this. So if I double click, it becomes as wide as this cell. Very useful tool. Can do the same thing with rows as well. So let's say income for a month. Let's say we made 850, 902, 408, 573, 945, 698. That's too big. Don't need the value there. So let's format this all as currency, counting format. So now let's say each person is going to take a certain split from that. So let's say I'm going to take 10%, Doug is going to take 10%, 3B is going to take 10%, Means is going to take 10%, Yami is going to take 10%, Artisans is going to take 10%. And then the rest is just KQM funds. So I'm gonna real quick make a lookup table just to allocate cuts. Actually, I can just paste transpose. There we go. So I'm going to make a lookup table here. I will explain this later, don't worry, but I'll refer back to this just to show you how lookup tables are actually used. Equals VLOOKUP, this value, table array, column index number should be 2. And here I'm going to show why we need absolute references. So right now, I'm trying to look up my name in this table. I'm saying my cut is 10%, and this is 0.1, which is 10%, which is accurate. What I'm doing is I'm looking up the name, the value in C1, in the first column here, which is L1. And I'm saying, when you find it, take the value in the second column, which is 10%. So I know that was very fast. I'm going to go more in depth on this later. That was just a quick briefer, just so that you're not completely lost. But the issue is, if I were to drag this over, so I also want to be looking up Doug's name, and 3Bs, and Reens, and Yami, and Artisans, and KQM funds, right? Because they all need their own cut. And this should be equals this times whatever the income for the month is. If I drag this over, it's not going to work. And the reason for that is because I'm looking up C1 here in the L1 to M7 table multiplied by the income for that month. That's all accurate. But now if I look to Doug, I'm looking up Doug's name, but I'm looking it up in this table shifted over one. I want to be looking it up in this table, not in the table shifted over one. And also, it needs to be multiplied by the income for the month, not multiplied by whatever my income is. Because since in the previous lookup, I was looking it up, this table is correct, this is correct, this is correct. Now, if I look at this, this is not the value I want to be looking at. I want to be looking at this value. And this is not the table I want to be looking at. I want to be looking at the table 1 over. So instead, if I delete all of this, and I hold this as absolute, and I also hold B2 as relative, because the thing is, I want to be able to adjust the income for the month because each month's income is different. So I want to allow it to move along the row, but everyone should be referencing the value in column B. So B should be held constant, but 2 should not be held constant. So I want it to look like this, $B2. And the way that you can swap through them, like I'm doing now, is just by hitting F4. Now if I do this, what did I, oh, M1 is not absolute. M1 also needs to be absolute. Or L1, there we go. E1 times B2. What is going on here? And this is when I have to debug things. What's the value? Is it, the problem is that L1 to M7 to 10%. B2 G1 of G1 in L1 to M7, 7 in the second column times B2. Let's see what this does. Look up G1. Oh, it's not absolute matching. That's the problem. Don't pay attention to anything that I just did. There needs to be a 0 here. There we go. So, and now if I drag this down, it still breaks because I'm dumb. Let's see, what's the problem? Oh, I did not keep C2 as absolute. And this was why you need a relative reference here as well. So I want my name to always be the value being looked up. I don't want the dollar sign, the dollar value to be looked up. But if I drag this down one, you see now I'm looking up 85 in this table. I want to be looking up ayzel, not 85, which means that I need to keep C1 as as a relative reference. I don't want it to be absolute, or else every single person's formula is going to be looking up my name. I want it to be able to adjust across rows or across columns, which means that the column needs to be held not constant, while the row needs to be held constant. So I would have C as unconstant and 1 as absolute. So now drag this across, drag this down, and there we go. Looks up everything correctly. And if I adjust anything here, if I adjust 3B to like 40%, I adjust KQ1 funds to 10%, as you can see, 3B now makes much more money. Shortcut is F4. Keep a cell constant can also be used for a constant value, although you can use the name range. Yes. Can you do it not changing in diagonal? Not really, because you mostly operate on rows and columns in Excel. There's not really diagonals. Can you repeat the VLOOKUP formula? Yeah, sure. It's equals VLOOKUP, the value that you're looking for. So let's say I'm looking for my name. In the table that you're looking for, this is the table that we're looking in. The column index number, which is which column the value you're looking for is in. And this is in, the percentages are in the second column, so we put 2. Range lookup just refers to like how you're supposed to be looking it up. If you want to be doing like absolute match or whatever, most of the time you can just put 0 here. It doesn't really matter. And then you'll get 10%. Like, well, it does matter. It's just for most people's purposes, they can just put 0 there. They're fine. But we'll get into lookups a little bit more later. Alt F4, very funny. But yeah, so that's an example of when you want to hold something. So as you can see, the array we're looking up is being held constant. The name we're looking up is not absolute. It's relative. It's a mixed reference where the column is changing because as we move right across the columns, we're looking up different values. Because we're looking up my name, then Doug, then 3B, then Reeds, then Yummy, then Art, then KQM. But the row that we're looking at is being held constant because as we move down the rows, we're always going to be looking up the names, the values in row 1. So the row cannot change. And then we're also multiplying by the income for the month. The income for the month, the column does not change because the column, the values for income are always going to be in row B. So B is being held constant. But each month has a different level of income, which means that the rows need to be relative because the value in the row is always changing depending on what month we're in. So that's where we need a relative reference. So that's an example where you would use a relative reference or a mixed reference both ways, both for one, either the row or the column being held constant, and an absolute reference. Let's see. October funds aware. I'll play the ads in a little bit, don't worry. So yeah, and one important thing to note is that named ranges are always absolute references. So if I say my name, and I have equals my name, if I drag this down, it's always going to stay constant. So yeah, named ranges, absolute. Cool. So we got past half of Excel basics. It's been like an hour. Yeah, we're going kind of slow on this, I guess. So yeah, let's go a little bit deeper into named ranges actually. So let's say that I want to be looking at this entire table, and I want to be able to reference this entire table somewhere else. I can actually name this entire, all of the values from A1 to I11 as a range. So I can say KQM income. And if I say equals KQM income, that will create a spilled range that has this entire table in it. It doesn't just need to be named ranges for a single cell. Named ranges can be for multiple cells at once, which is really useful if I want to be, for example, let's say I want to create some sort of index match that looks up a given person's income for a given month. So let's say month, person, and we will format these so that people know that you have to type a value in them. So let's say month is 2022, and we're trying to look up Yami's income. So let me make an index match real quick. Output equals index. And then, since this is all KQM income, instead of saying look up these two values in A1 to I11, which would be A1 to I11, which is how you would select that, I can also just use index KQM income. And I'm just completing the index match real quick. And in March 22, Yami made $85, which is accurate. Let's say like October 2022, Yami made $10.03. So that's an example of how you can use named ranges. Ideally, these would also all be named ranges. So I would have like person lookup value, and then which this could be person. Why is it breaking? Oh, wrong one. P1. This one is person lookup value. And this could also be like date lookup. And then I can use date lookup value here. You want your named ranges to be relatively descriptive so you can read. And instead of A1 to A11, I can call this range like KQM income headers. And I can call this like KQM income months. And now instead of having these, I can even have this as KQM income months. And this can be KQM income headers. So now I have no cell references. Well, no like letter number cell references. Every single thing is a name range. This is much easier to read than having to actually look up like what ranges your cells are referring to. Actually look at the number, go to the sheet, look up what column and what row something is referring to. Instead, you can just say, okay, I'm looking up the date in the months, and I'm looking up the person in the income headers. That's much easier to understand than match P2, comma, A1 to I1, comma, 0. Like this one is much easier to understand, which is why named ranges save lives. Always use them. Let me just delete all these. Actually, whatever, we can keep. Never mind. Normal Excel basics, how to type, how to color, how to make table equals A1, magic, ayzel Excel basics, how to use functions, VLOOKUP is good, but wait till later, how to manage finances. Will I be giving you homework? No, not really, but you can, I can like send some stuff over to some people if they're interested. Anyways, so that is a quick crash course, I guess, on why you want to use named ranges. Named ranges are your variables. Variables are important, so use them. Because if you don't know what things are, it's very difficult to verify. Let's see. References, we covered. Named ranges, we covered. All good. Please use the shortcuts. Okay. Let's talk about shortcuts that will save your life, because using shortcuts is very important. First one, Control-D and Control-R. This is probably going to be your most used shortcut in Excel by a long shot, unless you count like copy and paste as a shortcut, in which case that might be your most. But Control-D and Control-R. So let's say I have a value here, and I want this 10 value to go down here. I want to copy 10 from row 11 all the way down to row 24. Instead of taking my mouse, moving it, and dragging it all the way down to row 24, which is still kind of fast, but you have to use your mouse for that, I can just say 10, highlight all the way down to row 24, press Control-D. That's it. And that's also, you can copy across rows with Control-R. So instead of taking my mouse, dragging all the way across like that, and copying values like that, delete all of this, go over, Control-R, copies over. And this can be done with basically anything. Like, let's say I want to copy the formatting in the cell. Let's say the cell is colored red, and I want to copy the formatting all the way down. I can just copy it down there, Control-D, it's all red. I want to copy it across, Control-R, that's also all red. Control-D and Control-R, copying across rows, copying down columns, very, very, very useful. And when you get into any kind of like actually using Excel, you're going to be using these functions all the time. Next thing that we want to cover is F2. So if I start typing in a cell that already has value in it, let's say like 2020, if I start typing in here, it's going to completely replace the value. If I type 2, it's not going to be 20212. It's going to just be 2. But what if I want to add on a number to the end of a string instead of just replacing it? Well, what I could do is, traditionally what you would do is you would go to the formula bar, click on the formula bar, and add a 2. And that'd be 20212. Instead, what you can do is, instead of clicking on the formula bar, hit F2. Oop. Wrong one. And now I'm typing, and I can just put a 2 there. And I want to add a 4. So yeah, if you just want to type somewhere instead of replacing the entire thing, that's how you do it. And this can get really useful for when you have formulas, when you get pretty long formulas, because if you need to retype the entire thing, that's pretty annoying. But instead of clicking here in order to start adding it, I can just have it highlighted, press F2, and then I can just start adding to the formula times 5. So yeah, F2 very useful. Another one that I use a lot is Alt-MN. So I hit Alt, and if you ever get confused on what a keyboard shortcut is, all you need to do is hit Alt, and it will just display them for you. This is for Excel only. But so let's say I want to go to the Formulas tab, so I hit Alt, I see M, I hit M. I don't need to hold these down, by the way. You can just hit them and let go. And then I want to, let's say I want to go to the Name Manager, which is what the Alt and M thing I was telling you about is. And this is where I can see all of my named ranges and what they refer to and the values in them. And that's really useful because you can't actually change named ranges. Like, this is KQM income. If I change this to KQM, or sorry, you can change name ranges, but you can't actually delete them. So, well, it's not really changing. It's more just having KQM and KQM income both refer to the same cells, which I guess doesn't really count as deleting. But I can't actually remove a named range unless I go to the name manager and I delete it manually. There might be a way, I haven't learned it if there is, but as far as I know, you can't actually do it. So you need to go to the name manager. So you just go to Alt-MN, then you can change it there. Alt-H0 and Alt-H9. That's how you add and remove decimal places. So Alt-H, H is home. So now I have every single thing that I can do in home. And let's say I want to add a decimal point to this output, because this output is 10.3. It's actually 1030. So let's say I want to add a decimal point. I'll just press Alt-H0, and that added 1 decimal point. And then Alt-H9 removes 1. Alt-H0, 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 Alt-H9, Alt-H9. So yeah, that's a really quick way to just add and remove decimal places. Another one is Alt-HN. That allows you to swap the formatting in a cell. So let's say, for example, I want this to be formatted as a long date. So I'll press Alt-HN, long date, and now it's a long date. There are, of course, some more. Let me think. Control-T makes something into a table. So let's make this into a table. And tables are pretty cool because you can do special things with them. For example, I want to retrieve the headers for this table. Instead of having to type like equals I1 to I11, I can have this highlighted, and then it will just have this like table formatting. Tables are also very useful whenever you're working with ranges, whenever you're working with they allow you to like sort easily. They have this filter on the top. They allow you to change design. They allow you to insert slicers. So let's say like I only want to be looking at my income, or something like that. I don't know. Tables are just useful. I'm not going to cover all of it right now. That's going to be for a later time or a later date. But Control-T converts things into tables, and then when you want to unconvert it into a table, you can just go right-click, table, convert to range. And then it'll keep this formatting, which might be annoying for you, but you can just also change that really easily by going to Alt-H-J. J is this formatting menu, and that will just go back to normal. This doesn't work for me. I'm not sure, honestly. Do I use Control-Enter? Yeah, so Control-Enter basically just allows you to so let's say I type a formula. So equals if equals ayzel true false. So if I hit enter, that just goes to the next cell immediately. But let's say I want to do like I don't want to immediately move to the next cell. I can just hit Control Enter, and it keeps the current cell that I'm at highlighted, which is like a small thing. But if I'm typing like a lot of things and I don't want to move sometimes, or I want to stay on that, because let's say like I'm just testing a function. I'm testing like a really long function. Pretend this is like 10 lines long or something. I don't know. Every single time, if I were to like hit enter and I want to change the function, I would have to hit the up arrow key, and then I would have to hit F2, and then I add it. Instead, I could just hit Control Enter, and then instead of hitting the up arrow key, I can just hit F2 immediately. Really small thing again, but it can be useful. I don't actually know if there's any other use for Control Enter. There probably is, but I don't know of it. So yeah, let's see, Control Shift L. So let's say that I want to be sorting some stuff. Let's say I want to be sorting KQM's income per month. So instead of creating a table, you could also not create a table and simply sort the data using I think this is called like a filter. So I hit Control Shift L, creates this filter, and now I can sort largest to smallest. So now we see July was the biggest, then April, then March, then August, all the way down to October. And then if I want to remove it, I can just hit Control Shift L again, and it removes it. And you can, of course, do more than just sort largest to smallest. You can also like not display certain rows. You can sort by color, which we don't have at the moment, but because there's nothing that's actually being colored. But yeah. Control page down and page up. So that just allows you to swap sheets really quickly. So as you see, I'm on different sheets here. Up, 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 down, 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 down. And yeah, as you can see, you can have multiple sheets on a single workbook. This entire file is called a workbook. And these are individual sheets in the workbook. Because you can't keep track of everything on one sheet for a lot of things. Like maybe I want the KQM finance data here, but I also want something that just displays a chart. So let's say I want like a chart that just shows this income data. And I want this to be like a separate sheet. What I can do is I can insert recommended chart. I think it's like trying to remember how you put charts on their own individual sheets. I remember learning about this sometime, but I think it's, yeah, move chart to new sheet. There we go. So let's say I want to have this on its own separate sheet for ease of view. Then I have like 2 sheets here. And you can of course have more and more and more. Like for my for the calculator, what happens is I have each character on its own individual sheet because that was the easiest way to handle it for me. Instead of having all the characters that I'm calculating for on a single sheet. So multiple sheets is really useful in Excel. In Google Sheets, you always want to be using multiple sheets unless you have a specific and well-justified reason for only using a single sheet in your spreadsheet. There do exist reasons to do that, but most of it is like not relevant to most people. So like one example is when I'm doing substat distribution for characters, Solver only works on a single sheet. It doesn't work across sheet for optimization, which means that you have to have everything on a single sheet if you want to be optimizing for team damage instead of personal damage. So having everything on one sheet can be better in some circumstances like that. But I feel like most of those cases is like I know what I'm doing like kind of situation. Most people should just be keeping things on separate sheets just for ease of organization. Yeah, Google Docs do have different shortcuts. That is probably why. The graph changes in real time, so if you change the table... no, the graph changes in real time. But yeah, control page down, control page up. Okay, so now let's talk about functions. So let's say in this table, I want to be looking at my total income for the year of 2022. I could just do equals this plus this plus this, etc. But that is a lot of work. Instead, what I can use is I can use the sum function, which just have the sum of all these values. And then I can drag this across, Control R, and it has the sum of all the values for each one of these. And the reason why this is pound signs is because the number is too large to display in the cell. If I just expand the column by a little bit, as you can see, 3B is now making $2,245.60 this year. So yeah, that's how we do, that's like an example of a basic formula. Sum, you only really need this one field, but you can also have sums of, like, let's say instead of doing this, I want sum of like, this and specifically KQM funds. I now have 2 inputs into my function. This can have as many as you want, but for most purposes, you will only need one. So yeah, you have some of that. Let's drag that across. So the sum function is a very, very basic function. You can also have things like equals average. And this is just the average income per month for KQM. Of course, again, numbers are all made up. The actual money that we make is not the money that is in here. Equals average of like my money. Let's say I make $56 on average per month. So those are some examples of like simpler math functions. You can have like sum, you can have product. Let's say I want to have product for like this for some reason. That's a large number. You would probably not ever use product when it comes to something like that. But yeah, those are like some simple mathematical functions. The next function that we should cover is lookups. And these are probably the functions that you will use the most, and then once you realize that lookups are just inferior to index match, you will steadily use it less and less until you just use index match all the time instead. But yeah, so let's say we have something like let me think, what would be the best example? Let's just use this. Let's say that we want to be looking up how much money 3B makes in a given month. So, month. And let's format this as input. So let's say this is June 2022. So how do we look up how much money 3B is making in a given month? We know what column he's in. 3B is the 5th column in our KQM income table. Or calling it a table would be inaccurate because it's not actually formatted as a table. But we know that 3B is the 5th column in this data. But the value of the month can change. So what we will need to do is we need to do equals VLOOKUP. V just stands for vertical. Because we're looking up down a column. In this column, if we're looking up like across rows, if we were looking up a person, it would be HLOOKUP for horizontal. But since we're looking down a column, we're using VLOOKUP for vertical. So we're trying to look up the lookup value, which is the value in cell P12. Then we want the table array. This is the table that we're looking up the value in. And what it will do is it will look at the lookup value, which is June 22nd. It will look in the first column of your table, and it will find the matching value. And then it will look across to the column index that you've designated, and it will retrieve the value from the given row that it found the lookup value in the given column. And I know that's confusing, so let me actually type this out. So what we're doing is we're looking at value P12. P12 is June 22nd, and that's in row 5. And now we're saying, okay, we know that the value that we're looking for is in row 5. Now which column is it in? Since 3B is in column 5, we say, okay, let's go to row 5, column 5. Row 5, column 5 is equal to 229.2. So if I press enter now, 229.2. And if you're ever confused on the order of how you should put things in, you can just hit the little function box here. That also exists for Google Sheets, if I remember correctly. So you look up P12 in table array KQM income, column index number, and it tells you what this means. Column index number is the column number in table array from which the matching value should be returned. The first column of values in the table is column 1. Table array is a table of text numbers or logical values in which data is retrieved, blah, 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 whatever. But yeah, so that's how VLOOKUP functions. And this is VLOOKUP is typically what people will start with when they are looking up values. The weakness of VLOOKUP is that this value 5 is set. It does not change with your table. So let's say we want to add in another person. Let's say we want to also give ZSK some money. I haven't actually set anything up, so this is all NA for now. But now, I was trying to look up 3B, right? But 3B is now in column 6. But I typed 5 here, and 5 does not change with the table. 5 is a constant value. So I would need to change this over to 6 for 3B. Now that might not seem too annoying, but when you have a lot of data to work with, having to change every single number in the VLOOKUP is a pain in the ass. You can actually fix this by having this be a match, but then you would just use index match anyways. So yeah, that's a VLOOKUP. That's how you use it. But now let's talk about the superior way to look at values, which is index match, or if you really want to get fancy with it, XLOOKUP. XLOOKUP is for later though, because that is like a dynamic array function. But index match. So index match works kind of similarly to VLOOKUP, but different in a lot of ways as well. So index match, instead of putting the lookup value first, like you do for a lookup, you put the table first. So KQM income is the table that we're trying to find. So index array, then the row number. So what row are we looking for? We're looking for the value in row 5, right? But how do we know that the value we're looking for is in row 5? We have to match this June 22nd value with whatever June 22nd is here. So we type in match. We're looking up this value in the lookup array, which is this KQM income months. And it should be an absolute match. So we type in 0, an exact match. So what this match function does, I can just have this on its own real quick. Let's type an equal sign to designate as a formula. You need equal signs in order to make things formulas. If you just have this, it just is text. But so what we have here is, it's saying match P12 in KQM income months. So the value in P12 is June 2022. So it's saying, okay, look at this array. P12 is equal to the 5th value in this array, because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it should be an absolute match. And that's why this value is 5. So now let's go back to index, KQM income months, or KQM income, match P12, KQM income months, 0. And then now we need to find the column that we're looking for. So we want to be looking up match 3B00D. And this needs to be looked up in this because we're trying to find the column that's in. So it needs to be looking across. So KQM, the lookup array is KQM income headers. And what we want to be doing is this should be an exact match. And that's all we need for index match. So you see, it still looks at the same exact value. But now if I insert a column, it doesn't break like the VLOOKUP does, because it's still matching 3B00D. It's just saying, okay, this second function now returns 6 instead of 5. So I will look in the 6th column instead of the 5th column. This previous VLOOKUP is still looking at the 5th column because we typed in 5. The graph change is real. Can work AF. I wrote. Okay, good that you're interested. There is even an explanation for us? Yeah, they build things in to explain how functions work to you if you forget. I think I watched this a couple of times. Yeah, all good. what might be easier for some of y'all is also just trying to put in some data and try and like make these functions yourself, test it out. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I'm not really expecting anyone to become an Excel expert like after one single watch. Will this be in KQ on YouTube? It will be on my personal YouTube. So I will probably upload it and I will send the link to the YouTube in like the Discord and TC announcements somewhere. I don't know exactly where, but yeah, somewhere. Oh shit, I have DMs and group chat messages that I should probably check, but I can't check them on stream. Where is my phone? Oh, there's my phone. Give me like 5 seconds. Okay, I'm back. So let's see. Index match, that's where we left off. Okay, so index match is probably one of the functions that you're probably going to use the most. It probably depends on, I'm saying probably, it depends on what you actually use Excel for. Sometimes you're going to use index match more than other places. Like for example, in my personal like calculator sheet thing, KQM, where is it, versions? Let's go to this one. Let's go to rotation example. Like for example, this is just nested index matches in nested index matches in nested index matches. So yeah, sometimes you're going to need to use a lot of index matches. But other times you don't need to use that many for some uses. So it really depends on what you're using, or what purpose you're using Excel for. But that's a good example of some sheet that requires a lot of index match. So let me look through the list of things that you can check. Excel basics, keyboard shortcuts, basic functions, name ranges, solver. I will get to solver later because that's probably a little bit too advanced right now. Pivot tables, slicers, sparklines, charts, macros, and other developer tools, data validation, dynamic array functions. I think for now I'll just keep on covering more functions. So let's go to formulas. If you go to formulas, you can actually see the function library, and there are a lot of different functions that you can use. So this is all your financial functions, or your logical functions like if. Let is something that you will probably never use. Switch or not, and like this is just true, true, false, false, true, false, false. And if you're familiar at all with like logic, any kind of logic, then you should know what these do. But it's like and. So and requires both statements or every single statement to be true in order for this value to be true, or only requires one of the statements to be true. XOR, meaning exclusive OR, is if they are both true or they are both false, then the statement evaluates the false. But if only one of them is true and the other is false, then it evaluates the true. Accidentally added parentheses there. I'll have to type the actual XOR. And there are more logical operators, of course. There's like equals not. So if I want this to be not false, that's true. Whatever. Keep that out there. What else? Let's go through some text functions. I think a lot of this is probably too complicated. Let's talk about volatile functions actually. So volatile functions are functions that require recalculation every single time your spreadsheet is updated. And I talked about one of these earlier, of indirect. And what indirect does is it retrieves whatever value you put into it. I think that's not really a good way to put it. Let me just show, I guess, what it does. So let's say I want to be retrieving the value in F5, but I have something that allows me to select a row and a column. So let's say row, column, column. And I want to be retrieving thing in F5. Now, how do I actually get the value in F5? Because I can't just say equals this. That just gives me the text F5. What I want to be doing is I want to be retrieving the thing within this text, or like within F5. But concatenating the two using the and symbol only gives me the text F5. So what I want to do is I want to do indirect that and that, and now this should give me the actual value in F5, which is this. So let's say go to G, still the same because the value in G5 is the same as F5, but let's say let's do G4, that changes, and let's do like D2, and that's 85. But yeah, if I only had this and symbol, it would only concatenate the two strings together. It wouldn't actually retrieve that as a reference. There's a difference between the reference D2 and the string D2. And indirect allows you to convert strings into references. This may be more familiar with people who like actually do like coding. Like if I were to open VS Code, Visual Studio. There is a difference between a variable name and a string with that variable name. So, like, do I have like any C++ stuff that I can look at? Okay. Yeah, so just for like a coding comparison, if any of you are familiar, what I could have is there's a difference between string, or who got this? I forgot how you actually use strings. Is it just S? Yeah. Getting my coding languages mixed up. Let's say string A is equal to hello. Cout A and L. Terminal plus. Undefined reference. Int main. It's been so long since I've done a C++. What am I doing wrong? And do I need to like return? G++ minus O. Maybe I'm just not gonna. Oh, there we go. /a.exe. So this prints out hello, because it's actually retrieving the variable a. But now, if I were to see out just a as a string, that's going to just print out a, as you can see there. And that's basically the same thing that's happening in Excel. When I have this and this, that is just the actual string D2. And if I try to like put out the value, I try to put out D2 in the cell, it's just going to have D2. But if I use indirect to actually make it look up D2 as a reference, that's going to treat D2 as a variable instead of as a string. And now you can actually look up the value in D2. Just for you coding nerds out there, I guess. Way too dank headphones. Oh no. Is this an Excel macro? No. Yeah, and another thing that this can be really useful for is if I have a named range. So KQM income. If I type equals this, it just has KQM income because this is a string, and I'm saying this set this equal to a string. And now if I say indirect, so that actually looks at the KQM income table like this. So another good example of how you can use indirect. Again, though, you don't want to have too many indirects in a spreadsheet because it requires recalculation every single time you have a change in the spreadsheet, and that's terrible. Because if you have 500 of them, it's going to crash your computer. Having a couple is fine, though, usually. Some other examples of volatile functions are the offset function, which just offsets by a certain number, offsets a certain like reference by a given number of rows or columns. The random function, which just gives you a random number between 0 and 1. So like, let me give you an example, rand, and I change this, that recalculates rand, that recalculates rand, that recalculates rand. So as you can see, every single change that I made to the spreadsheet would recalculate. I think today is also a volatile function, or equals now, I think that's also a volatile function. I don't remember exactly the full list, but volatile functions require recalculation, generally not that great. Let's see. Yes. Can you fix cutting C2? No, I cannot. I am not a hacker, mans. Like, y'all are saying this is very hacker, mans. This is literally like hello world in C++. It's not that complicated. But yeah, so that's an example of indirect, which is a volatile function. If you want to learn a little more about, like, I don't even know like half of these things do, honestly. There are some really cool functions that you can do though. Like chi-squared, test binomial distribution, gamma, Pearson, skew, wave. I have no idea what that even is. And you can also get like, let me see. I'm pretty sure you can just retrieve like stock prices like directly in Excel, like AAPL start date 11/2020 to 1/2020. Oh. I don't actually remember how the stock function works, but I'm pretty sure you can just straight up retrieve like stock data. It's pretty cool. Is it? Now I'm trying to figure out how this works. Information maybe? No. Web. Does that work? Nah. But yeah, you can do some pretty whack shit with functions. It's pretty cool. I don't know how to do like most of the more complicated functions, but again, most of them you probably won't even use, so not really that much of a need to know them unless you're like doing a lot of data analysis and you actually like use Excel for a job, in which case you probably want to know those. But yeah, so that's functions. Let's see what's next. Let's go to pivot tables and slicers. Let me just tell Zonto. Because Zonto wanted to learn. Oh, there we go. He's here. How long is X lookup compared to V lookup? So how I can just cover this really quickly. How X lookup works is it looks up in named ranges instead of just in data. So I want to be looking up like June 20 in the lookup array. So KQM income months, and I want to have a specific return array. So let's say we select this and call this like 3B income. Please work. Why is this not working? Oh, it's because you can't have the named range start with a number. Which is really whack for some reason. Actually, let's just not use 3B. Let's just use reens as an example. Because I don't want to type out 3. So, equals X lookup. And now I can just look up this in the lookup array, which is KQM income months. In the return array, which is reens income, if not found, it will be 0. Match mode should be 0, and search mode should be. I think with XLOOKUP you can actually use binary search. Yeah, binary search, ascending and descending, or sorted ascending or sorted descending, and you can also say if you want to search first to last or last to first, which is really quite complicated, not something that most users would use, but this helps avoid the problem of where I had earlier. Remember, I was inserting like another column and we did ZSK, and it fucked over like the lookup for 3B. This you just look up within an array specifically that shifts, because this array, this named range will shift whenever you add a column or remove a column. It's not an absolute value like 5, so it fixes the issue with VLOOKUP that we were talking about earlier. Anyways, pivot tables. So let's do this car pivot table. And the way that pivot tables work are they are ways to display data in a, how should I put this? Like, it's a way to query data and display the data that you query in a very adjustable and easily customizable format. So let's do pivot table. Let's put this at the table that we want is this table. So now we have a pivot table, but we don't have anything in it yet because we just created it. So as you see, there are 4 fields that we have here. We have rows, columns, values, and filters. So let's say, for example, let's look at car inventory. In car inventory, we have the make, the model, the color, the mileage, the price, and the cost. And then let's also do like profit margin. And as you can see, this should have some more decimal points, so we press Alt H00. More decimal points. And this pivot table also is not referring to the correct data, because remember, we only had it refer up until column G. So we need to swap the data that this is referring to. So what we could do is we can just hit change data source, and instead of G25, we just hit H25. So yeah. But let's say we want to be looking up the profit margin by car make. So we want make in the rows. So now we have these, and then now we have profit margin in values. So yeah, the profit margin that we have for all our Chevrolet cars is 1451. The profit margin that we have for all of our Dodge cars is 1391. Ford is whatever. And this can be any value. So let's say price and cost. So now we have the price and the cost. So as we can see, the price for all our Chevrolet cars is 14,451. Sum all the costs for our Chevrolet cars is 13,000. And we can also have like color. And color is not a value that you can sum up. So instead we have count. And you can click on this, go to value field settings, and you can do whatever you want. So let's say instead of looking at the profit margin total for all of our cars, we want to look at the average profit margin by whatever company. So this is sum, right? I can click on this little arrow right here, value field settings, and change this to average instead. And it looks like we have the highest average profit margins for our Honda cars. We can also have this be minimum. So the smallest profit margin is for our Ford cars, the minimum value. And let's say we want it to be the standard deviation of profit margin. The largest standard deviation for profit margin is for our Dodge cars, the smallest one is for Chevrolet cars. So you can really play around a lot with whatever value, whatever thing you put into the values field. And in the rows field, we can have more than just one row. We can have it by make and then by model. So for example, we have make in the first slot and then model in the second slot. And then so what we have is we have Chevrolet as the topmost category that we're categorizing by. But then within those make categories, we also have model. And since I have make first and then model second, it first sorts, it has the grand first biggest category by make and the second category by model. So now let's say we want to view profit margin. And now we look at the profit margin for all Ford cars, but we break it down by the specific cars. And instead of sum, let's look at average. So we have the largest average profit margin for, it looks like Ford F-150s. And we have the smallest average profit margin for, it looks like Toyota Corollas. So that's a very easy way to look at data very quickly. And let's change this to sum. And we can have this sorted even more. So now let's say we want to sort by make, and then by model, and then by color. So now we have Chevrolet Impala Silver, Chevrolet Impala White, blah, blah, blah. So it looks like, let's do average again. It looks like we have the highest average profit margin for specifically black F-150s. Or actually, no, sorry, red Honda Accords, because that's 1,000. And we have the smallest profit margin for specifically black Ford Escapes, I think. Oh, no, sorry, black Toyota Corollas. So, yeah. Whatever you have in rows, it will sort by the topmost and the secondmost and the thirdmost of the categories. And then you can have the values. But let's say we only want to be looking at Hondas. So what we could do is we could just only select Honda here. And then we would only be looking at Hondas. What we could also do is we can have Honda as a filter. Let's look at only Hondas. Or let's look at only Toyotas. Or let's look at only Chevrolets. So in the whatever value you have in the filters column or in the filters field, it will allow you to filter by that thing. So I have make here, so I'm filtering by color make. If I had color here as well, I can filter by both make and by color. And apparently we have no blue Chevrolets. Or red Chevrolets. Or black Chevrolets. We do have some white Chevrolets though. So yeah. And then we have columns. Let's drag this all back. So let's do make and rows and color and columns. So now instead of color being a subcategory of make, we have color as a column for make. So now we can drag profit margin into values, and we can see specifically how much profit margin in sum. Let's actually just change this back to average. We had for each of these. And let's also format this number a little bit better. There we go. That looks better. So yeah, that's basically how columns work. You can either have them both in the same field, so that one is a subcategory, or you can have it one as a row and one as a column. So it's like crossing each other, I guess. Do you use a lot of pivot tables for my job? I don't actually have a job. I'm a student. However, to use Excel like you're doing the upload to Google Drive, does it visualize correctly or it breaks because some things are different? I know that sometimes can break for like more advanced formulas, but generally you're gonna be fine. So that's basically like pivot table basics. There's really not that much that you need to know about pivot tables beyond just this. You can play around with like value field settings, you can play around with formatting, but generally it's just like on rows you have rows, on columns you have columns, on values you have the numbers that you have next to the rows or in between or crossed by the rows and columns, and filters just allow you to filter out data. And let's look to something that you might care a little bit more about, which is motion values. So let's remove all of this. So let's say that we want to be looking at characters by how much damage, the damage type that they deal. And then the damage type is a subcategory, and let's say we want to be looking at the talent level 9 values. So Albedo burst at talent level 9 deals, this should be formatted differently, give me a second. It should be formatted as a percentage. Albedo's burst at talent level 9 deals 746.64%. His charge attack deals 197.5%. Normal attacks deal 427.62. Plunge deals 645.68. Skill deals 448.80. And this is not just an individual single hit. This is the sum of all possible values at talent level 9. So all of his plunge damages together sum up to 645.68. So that's including his low plunge, his high plunge, and his collision plunge. His burst, this probably includes the initial hit plus all of the solar isotome or whatever things. I have no idea what they're called. For some reason, Barbara's burst deals like infinite damage. What's up with that? Oh, that's probably from healing. Yeah, this is not really the best data to be using with pivot tables. I was just using it because it's like something that y'all are probably more familiar with than car data. But yeah, this is all here because like their bursts have flat healing, which I store as numbers instead of percentages, but when you convert it over to the percentages, it gets multiplied by 100, which makes the numbers pretty big. Why is this so quiet? Okay. Just quiet on my end for some reason. But yeah, so that is an example of how you can use pivot tables. And now let's go back to the card pivot table because I want to make a pivot chart. So let's sort by make, then by model, then by profit margin values. So this is nice to look at numbers, but what if I want to represent it visually? Then what I can do is I can have a chart. So I can do this. So now this pivot chart is based on the data I have here. So I have Chevrolet, Impala, Malibu, Silverado, Dodge, Charger, Ford, Escape, F-150, Fusion, Mustang, Honda, Accord, Civic, CRV. And as you can see, this represents just the total sum of profit margin. But if I remove model from here, then now I only have the columns with the make, no model. But if I do this and I actually additionally add in color, then it sorts it by 3 things. And in this case, you don't want all of that down there. So you would probably have a different pivot chart. And then you can also use these plus and minus buttons to like expand and not expand certain categories. But I would probably use like a stacked bar chart or something here instead. So I would go here, pivot chart, like stacked column, and then looks like not that actually. Pivot charts are not something I'm that familiar with. It would probably look like be like pivot table, pivot chart. I used something like this recently, but I don't remember how I did it. Anyways, but yeah, you can do some funny stuff like this, which is an interesting way to represent car prices. It looks kind of like a Dracula, like if you like tilt it, kind of. I don't know, but yeah. So that's an example of a pivot chart. Pivot charts are pretty useful for representing visually the data that you get in pivot tables. We should also talk about slicers. So a slicer basically just tells you can slice up your data by a given variable. So let's say I want to be slicing my data by make. This is basically just a filter. So let's say I want to only be looking at Chevrolets. I would select Chevrolet, and now I can only see Chevrolet. What about Dodge? Just Ford. Or I'm pressing Shift click here, which is what's allowing me to select multiple. But if I just click, it only selects one. So Toyota, Nissan, Honda, Ford, Dodge, Chevrolet. And this allows you to very easily like create better visual representation for data. So now let's go over to another different slicer. Let's slice, for example, by color. So I only want to be looking at green cars, or silver cars, or white cars, and I only have Chevrolet. Let me select all actually. So let's say I only want to be looking at black cars, or blue cars, or green cars, or red cars, or silver cars, or white cars. That allows me to do all of that. Timeline is also something that you can do, but that requires you to have a date on your stuff. So let me actually go over to KQ Finance data. Let's do it like right here. So let's say I want to be looking at we actually delete this one. So yeah, let's say I want to be sorting by date. or by months. And what I want to be doing is I want to be showing the income per month. Sum of the income per month. So this sums up all the values across. But now let's see. Let's just look at my personal income by month. So what I want to do is I want to have myself in rows. Or this should be swapped actually. And now this shows my income by month. Because I want to have the value be my income per month. And the row, the thing that changes, is which month I'm in. And you'll see my grand total there. But now let's say I want to be looking at a timeline of all of this data. What I can do is I can go to the pivot table, analyze, insert timeline based on date. And now I need to actually put some data in. I need to actually be looking at like for myself. Basically, this just allows me to select certain numbers of dates. So now let's say I want to be looking at my income specifically between August and November. I would select August to November, and now, as you can see, I'm summing up my specific income from August to November. Or I can select July, or just August, or just September, or October. I can select all of these, and it gives me all of this stuff in total. That's how timeline works. It basically just allows you a quicker way to select dates. Relatively simple thing to use. Of course, there's like more complicated things that you can do with pivot tables, but I think I'm just gonna leave it at this for now because this is generally like enough to get you through those things. Okay. Let's see. What else do I need to cover? Tables and special spark lines. Yeah, I think we'll end it soon. And we'll just say this is part 1 and then we can do part 2. Your mic? What? What is wrong with my mic? What? It's back? I don't know what happened. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on there. Maybe I'll just cut it out of the final recording. I have no idea what was going on there, honestly. Give me a second. Let me just check the connection between my mic and my computer. Okay, I think it should be good now. Okay. Okay, well hopefully that doesn't happen again. I think it might be one of the settings on it. Okay. Filters? Edit filters? Okay, I think the actual reason was that my phone is too close to my mic. I think it should be fixed now. It's probably my phone interfering with the mic somehow. Which I don't know how that works, but apparently it's a thing that happens. Oh yeah, these filters back. It's a sound when your Galaga ship gets destroyed. I've never played Galaga, so I wouldn't know. Yeah, it's some magnet thing. Anyways, my phone is far away from my mic now. That should be fine. Yeah, let's talk about sparklines. Sparklines are just a neat little thing. It's not really that important, but it's pretty cool. It basically just shows a graph inside a cell instead of having a graph like this. I mean, so like what you can do is you could have this all as a graph. You could say like home, insert, recommended. Like this is income by month or something. But now, let's say insert sparkline. So I want to have, instead of a graph like that, I just want to have a little tiny graph in this cell. Where is sparkline, sparkline, sparkline? Swear to God, I can't find shit anymore. There we go. So date range, I want to do this. And now this just shows the income a little bit. So we can say like it goes up, it dips down, goes back up, dips down, goes up, dips down again. Very little tiny thing. And you can like have this for everything. And of course these are all just splits of the original value, so they all look the same. But yeah, that's basically what sparklines are. Little tiny thing, pretty cool. It's pretty good for visually displaying data if you ever want to do that. And you can of course make the row taller to make the graph also taller. So yeah. Good chat. Anyways, I think that's enough for this first session. I think we've covered a decent bit. I know that on basics I was pretty fast. I can recover basics in the next time that we do something like this. Just go over like, so here's a quick review, whatever. But yeah, that's essentially like the first half of this like Excel course, I guess. Of course, there's a lot more that you can know about Excel, but I think it's kind of diminishing returns for Excel knowledge. Because the more advanced stuff is not stuff that a lot of people are going to need to use all that frequently. Like, yeah, it's cool to learn Power Query so that you can, like, let's say, create permutations of data. And I've used it like twice in the past, but it's not really something that you're going to be using anywhere close to as near as like VLOOKUP or index smash, for example, or like keyboard shortcuts like Control D or Control R. So there definitely is, I think, some level of diminishing returns when it comes to Excel knowledge, just because the more esoteric things generally tend to not be used that much. There are exceptions, of course. But yeah, so this is end of part 1 of the series. I'm going to end the recording now. I won't end stream. I'll take some questions. If anyone wants me to show examples or re-explain something, I can do that. So, to all the YouTube viewers, see ya. There we go. What's the next one? Can you do it no earlier next week? Yeah, I'll probably be next week at some point. Anyways, I will upload it. Hoomstava. Who reacted like that? Yeah, so anyone got any questions? I'll wait around for a bit, see if anyone's got anything to say, and then we'll we'll talk. Or we'll go. I use spreadsheets for work and still use some shortcuts. Nice. Thank you for a lesson. Thank you. Well, I talked about coloring. Yeah, we can talk about conditional formatting at some point. Yeah, so I can actually just do that really quick. Let's go over to this. Let's look at Ayaka. This is all Ayaka's attacks. Home, format, conditional formatting. And then we can say like highlight every single cell that is greater than 100%. Or 1, which would be 100%. So we would highlight it like that. We can also do, for example, a gradient. So color scales, like this. And then now the green is the largest, which is her single hit skill damage. And the red is the smallest, which is her apparently her 4 hit damage, because that has 3 hits attached to it. So each individual hit is pretty small. Do you know a way to type ranges in Excel like you can? Oh, oops. Just held my phone close. There we go. Should be fixed. No more ASMR, I'm sorry. You know a way to type ranges in Excel like you can in G Sheets? In G Sheets, I can do e.g. A3 to C, but it gives an error in Excel. I mean, the thing is, A3 to C is not range. That's a cell to a column, so it won't work. So what you need to do is like equals A3 to C3, and now that would work. Did I cover basic paste options? If not, could be helpful to go over the basics. Yeah, we can talk about paste options. I think for most people, you want the only things that you would need is paste without formatting, paste formatting but no values, paste with value and formatting, which is just basic copy and paste transposed. I think that's it that most people would need, but we can talk about that, yeah. Can you explain how to calc the index between different pages? I'm not sure what you mean by index between different pages. Could you explain that a bit? Next function, but taking a different. Oh, date. I see what you mean. Yeah. So the way that you do that is, let's just say that we're looking at to index something from. No. I need something with unique values. The issue with this is that it's not unique values. So let me try and see if I can grab something from my own sheet. Let's say here. Let's just grab Xiao's data. Oop, actually. Yeah, it unhighlights or removes things from your clipboard sometimes. Lament. I'll give us an example. I change entire team's rotation from 0. On sheets A3 to C, we can make whole columns starting from 3. I think it might just be different formatting. Excel should have that functionality, but if you mean columns from 3 to 5, you would just do 3 like that. Except they would spill because you have the entire just column. So we do like equals 3, 5. Like that. Unless you mean you want the specific values between A3 and C3, in which case you would just do A3, C3. Like that. Wait, sorry, index function would take the data from different pages. So what I would do, for example, is let's go to like MVs, or let's just go to MV pivot table, just use some empty space. What you would want to do is you would want to do something like equals index, open the parentheses. Now go over to the sheet that you want. Like that, highlight it, and see what you'll do is you'll say Xiao base stats exclamation mark, and that's saying retrieve A1's F15 from the Xiao base stats sheet. And then we go back to pivot table, and then we can just do like match, or not even match. Let's just do like 5 and 3. And yeah, so column row 5, column 3 would be row 5, column 3, which is 140, which is the same value that we have here. Meant. But yeah, that's basically how you reference things across sheets. What you would do is you would just say equals, like, I mean, if you want to type it out by hand, you could do this. But most of the time, it's probably easier for most people to just click on this, click on that, press enter. I don't think there's anything else. Unless anyone else has any other questions. I'm not gonna sheet a rotation from 0. Making a calculator from 0 is too much work. Does anyone have any questions about anything that we covered on stream? Haven't touched Excel enough to know what to ask. That's fair. I mean, a lot of this stuff here is like went through it pretty quickly, so I think that a lot of people are going to. A lot of people joined in the middle, which is also fair. But we'll just go through. We'll talk about like. We'll talk about, well, you can just go through the video that's going to be posted at some point. You can look at how things are broken down if you missed it or if you didn't understand it. And then if you have any questions, you can just DM me or something, and then we can talk about it. Or just asking questions, please help, and hope that they know how to help you. I don't know. Okay, I think that we're all good, so I'm going to end stream and then I have to get to a section, so I gotta blast.